Welcome to the SHODcast. This is your Week 10 preview. Your host, Sean Klein. Aside me, Mike Height and Matt McKenney. Gentlemen, we are into the double digits of the NFL season.
Yes, we are. Getting down to the wire, starting to really, see some playoff pictures unfolding here. So it'll be fun next few weeks to see what happens.
And this week, I'm sure, showed a few new nuggets of information for you to break down for us as we get into the games. Let's do it.
Who's that Pokemon?
But first, who is this guy? Your hints last week were 2010 New England wide receiver. He had 7 touchdowns that year, and he helped get your popcorn ready to a historic 0.2-point championship over Rob Cav. Any guesses?
Did you say you thought it was? You said you thought it was Deion Branch. Is that what you said?
Deion Branch was my guess last week.
Matt, a guess?
Deion Branch is as good a guess as there is, I would say.
It's not Deion Branch.
Okay.
It's Wes Welker.
Look at those eyes. Those are
penetrating
eyes right there.
Very, very piercing.
We got some good names coming up over the next few weeks too. First game of the week, Lafferty Daniel 118 over the Van Buren boys, handing them their second loss of the season by a score of 118-105. Break it down, Matt.
Yeah, Lafferty's got a good output from Joe Mixon in this one. 28 points. Had a very solid game, even in a loss against Cleveland, but enough to propel the Laffertys to a win here this week.
Next game, El Barbil Charbacues 135 points the Charbs put up, getting their second win of the season over unrealized air yards, aka Rafi bombs. Mike, what happened here?
Yeah, just really happy for the Charbacues. Getting that second win of the season. Devonta Smith had a very good game, even though Jalen Hurts only threw for about 115 yards, so that's very impressive. And then Ayuk showed up for the first time this year, and Renfro just kind of took those rug targets and had a very good game.
Yeah, battling there with only one QB. Feel the Rush 132 over the Muppets 114. Feel the Rush on a roll, right, Matt?
Yeah, I think so. Again, this is a team that's kind of poised for a good playoff run here, getting some production from the receivers. Multiple guys had good weeks this week for them. Keenan Allen is tops among those, 22.4 points. But newly acquired Alvin Kamara also with a 20-digit game this week, or 20-point game rather. So good start for Field Rush with that new player.
The NWO gets another win, 105-87 over the Jay Walsh football team.
Yeah, kind of a low-scoring affair. Hurts didn't really put up his signature 20 points, but it was still enough to beat Jay Walsh.
All right, and before we move on here, could you please, for the record, pronounce the tight end's name?
Oh, Albert Akwegbunam.
I think that one's
just call him Alberto. That's what everybody in the industry calls him.
Track getting over the 100-point mark to edge out Armin Tamzarian 100-99. Matt.
Yeah, what a grind out win here. I mean, you win by about a point, and you're putting in slugs like Jordan Howard with 13.1 points. Kudos to Revenge of Ed Kilgore for really just kind of putting the pedal to the metal here on Armin, just kind of forcing one in there, getting the win.
Getting 10 points from Dan Arnold.
Came down to the final drive last night. He just needed Kmet to get one more catch, and it would have been a win for Armin.
The Flutie Flakes, another 1-point win over the Rusty Truckers, 105-104. Mike, break this one down.
Yeah, absolute nail biter here. Chubb with a just ginormous game against the Bengals. Other than that, really not much going on. Jimmy G had a pretty good game. And then the Truckers, just not a great performance by the Rams. And anytime the Rams don't have a good game, the Truckers aren't going to have a very good game either.
Yeah,
Cubs
actually
still putting
needed
up over 20 points though.
just needed either one of those players or Stafford to score a touchdown on that last drive, and it ended up being Sony Michel. So lost by a point.
And I don't think this is right.
That is not correct.
Who's our last game? Do you happen to remember?
Who would have
Let's
Vince?
let's look it up.
Vince and somebody?
Vince and somebody sounds right.
So yeah, Vince did, I think, come out on the losing end. Fat Jim's pummeled him pretty good, actually, by about 50 points. It was 138.1 to 80.1. Fat Jim's huge output on Thursday night from Jonathan Taylor, 36 points in that game. Kirk Cousins also had 23 points. So Fat Jim's, man, looking really good.
Yeah, they're looking really good. And also, let's talk about how bad my team is fine is looking. Only getting 80 points this week, and man, it's a rough go for them, whether they have Christian McCaffrey in the lineup or not.
Yeah, getting 1.7 points out of your starting quarterback is just never a good thing.
That's rough. Looking at the standings, we have a whole big crowd of 444s, kind of between that 6 and 11 spot. So 6 and 11, that last playoff spot pretty much wide open. What do you guys think?
Wow.
Yeah, I would say. Did we change the rule this year where it's highest scoring not in the playoffs gets the 7 seed?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the highest point total that is not in the first 6 gets a spot.
Right. Yeah, I don't see a lot changing by the end of the season. I think it's going to be a battle for 7th. I would say, in my mind, the top 6 are pretty much decided.
Yeah, it's gonna. I think I mean, there's a lot still that could potentially happen. Obviously, injuries, COVID. You know, there's always the possibility that a team kind of falls out of the top. I think I'm with Mike, except I think it's a lot more firm with the first 4, maybe first 5. But I think Muppets and the Truckers are definitely teams that could slide out of the playoff picture. If they don't get some wins here in the home stretch, because you look at Trek and that's a team that has points. They're 4 and 5, but they're right on the doorstep there with the points. So they've had big weeks this year. They could certainly make a push. And I think that Lafferty's been hot. So as bad as his points have been, if he keeps getting wins and kind of grinding them out, you could see. Maybe he, just gets in on the merit of the record, and then, you're just kind of getting somebody with, most points between Muppets and Truckers kind of, or even Trek, one of those 3 teams could potentially be, the ones that are odd man out.
Yeah, and let's talk about the high score for a second. Fat Jim's in the clear lead with 1,233 points for, but just underneath it you have Muppets with 1196, New World Order with 1194, Van Buren Boys 1192. Oh, and actually Feel the Rush is up there with 1208 as well. So we have a lot of teams that are really close in the point standings. So. Just looking at the numbers here, I really think it's anyone's game. Even the top spot, like you said, Matt, one injury can do a lot of damage to Fat Jim's.
To anybody, and like you said, the point. I mean, even if you compare Fat Jim's to even like my team, it's only 60 points. You can make that up in a week if your team does really well. So I think most points is still like totally anybody's ball game as well.
And before we move on, I do want to point out one thing, and it's that the Muppets playoff percentage is 69%.
Nice.
Moving along. The SHODcast injury report. Matt, what's going on with Sam Darnold?
Oh, Sam Darnold showed up on the injury report conveniently for the Panthers. You wonder if they broke his scapula for him. But it's interesting. A scapular fracture, it's kind of a very arbitrary thing. It's like saying arm fracture almost. Like you don't really get any details on that because there's the scapular body, which is kind of like the triangular major portion of the scapula. And then you've got these little projections of bone that come off the scapula, like the coracoid process, the acromion process, portions of the scapula that kind of connect with the shoulder. So you don't really know exactly, what type of scapular fracture he has. I have to think that it's probably just a very small fracture that's one of the projections of bone that comes off of the scapular body because a scapular body throwing shoulder would be, or a scapular body injury to the throwing shoulder would be a real serious problem. Probably would be out for the season with an injury like that. So interesting to see what happens with this. We really don't have a lot of details. So, I mean, again, maybe it's by design that they don't give us a lot of details. Just like, yeah, he's scapular fracture. Sounds bad, right, guys? We got to go to the backup here.
Mike, how's this going to affect people with Panthers on their teams?
So we're pretty much just talking about Vince at this point in time. It's not going to really make any changes. If anything, it's going to be better for him. I don't know. PJ Walker's going to come in and be the starter now, and I don't know. That's a downgrade, to be honest.
The next injury we're going to talk about isn't really an injury per se. Matt, tell me what's going on with Dalvin Cook.
Hold on. You mean it's not an injury? You've been sprayed in the face with bear mace?
Apparently, that's what happened. So, this is a year and a half ago.
A year and a half ago, though.
I'm assuming.
What's generally the recovery time on that?
Well, that's what we're talking about right now in the SHODcast injury report. So initially, when you get sprayed in the face with mace, generally you get some injection in your eyes, which is basically like redness and swelling. There's a lot of the lacrimal glands will start, putting a lot of tears out into your eyes, and it's very painful to undergo. But also you can get some kind of increase in production of a lot of mucus in the nose and the mouth, and so you kind of just are pretty incapacitated for a short period of time. Now, what's interesting here in regards to Dalvin Cook is, as I said before, this is an injury that occurred about a year and a half ago. But now we're starting to deal with potentially some of the psychological effects of getting maced in the face. And, it's a pretty scary moment to have happen to you. And especially if it's somebody who you trusted in the past and that you loved, maces you in the face, that could potentially be pretty scarring. So, as of right now, it seems like Dalvin Cook has rebounded pretty well from this injury. But as the details of this domestic violence case kind of progress, and I don't mean to make light of it too much, but it's a little bit funny, but we'll see how he bounces back and whether or not this is something that continues to make headlines throughout the season.
Mike, if this does continue to make headlines, when do you start getting worried if you have a spot on your roster for Dalvin Cook?
I don't know. I mean, he seems to be fine. I mean, if this happened a year and a half ago, he had the best season of his life after this happened. So, I don't know. I would imagine this is weighing on him and mentally, I'm sure this is very tough, but on the field, he really hasn't shown any side effects. Obviously, if he ends up taking a mental health break or something like that, it's going to be a huge opportunity for Madison. But at this point in time, it seems like he's doing okay. I mean, the only thing I could see happening is if it comes out that he was involved in domestic abuse on his end and, getting a commissioner's exemption or something like that. But I don't know. We'll see.
Never know how these things are going to pan out.
I think he recovered pretty well.
Coming in at number 14, is there any surprise here, Mike?
No, I think he's been here pretty much all season. So, hello, Steve.
Number 13, Matt.
My team is fine again. With the drop continues, the decline continues, unfortunately.
I could see those two switching at some point in time. Who knows?
Number 12, Armin Tamzarian. Again, one of those 4-4 teams, or 4-5 teams rather, that they just don't impress, but their record shows 4-5. So in the standings, they're a little bit higher, but on the SHODcast power rankings, they don't really gain much.
Yeah, Jay Walsh. Were they 4-5? Are they in that big group of 4-5 teams right now?
Yeah.
Just the where they're supposed to be at 11.
Oh, Rafi bombs, man. What this team could have been, if a couple guys had played a little bit better this year. But I think at this point we have seen all of the playoff opportunity for Rafi bombs deteriorate, and this is about where we're going to see him at the end of the year, I think.
I mean, I think it's safe to say that the entire Rafi bombs have all been bear maced.
Rising up the rankings, Lafferty Daniel getting into that 4 and 5 group, and also getting rewarded by the SHODcast power rankings in that regard too, rising up 4 spots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here's Trek. Barely edged out a win last week. I'm very concerned about this team. Klein's still convinced that he's going to be able to replace Derrick Henry, but I don't feel the same way.
We got the Truckers at 7. Again, kind of just hanging around right in the middle, and then, in the cusp of being in the playoffs. This is a team that's got a ton of firepower, but not a lot of depth. So we'll see what happens here.
Also in the cusp of the playoffs, the Nation. I was actually surprised to see the Nation here at number 6, since Matt, the Truckers beat them last week, or was the week before rather. But in either case, it just goes to show how kind of muddled it is here between 5 and maybe 10.
Yeah, the Flakes. Able to get a win last week, despite an awful performance by the Bills. So that's a good sign for him, I guess. You're able to edge out a win, but I don't feel great about the Flakes. They've dropped pretty far in my rankings, and I would say of the top 6, they're the ones I'm most concerned about.
So is it me? Feel the Rush. Sorry. Feel the Rush is good. I mean, I think Feel the Rush is like kind of bubbling under the surface. They're a team that's got really, really good receiver talent. And I think it's starting to really come to fruition here for them. I think, initially they kind of had some bumps and bruises and weren't really playing very well. Kind of started out slow, but this is the time where the momentum's starting to build. And I think Feel the Rush is one of those teams we should watch.
Getting into the top 3, New World Order, they're keeping their spot there at number 3, but I do think we have a change of pace up here in the top 2.
Yeah, VBB's here, coming off a tough loss to the Laffertys. Last week I put our number 1 team at number 1. I was the only one, but I called it. VBB, they're still a very good team, but there's a little bit of concern on that team. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little bit worried about VBB.
And Matt at number 1, your brother. Talk about his team.
Yeah, Fat Jim's, really has climbed the rankings significantly. Earlier in the season, I called them the most underrated team in the show. And now, they've asserted themselves as the top team in the show. Team with very, very good running back talent led by Jonathan Taylor, but, also good supporting cast of DeAndre Swift and also, Darrell Henderson. So, this is a team that I think the sky's the limit here. They're going to be tough to beat down the stretch.
And if I knew how little I knew.
Now it is time for the Don Paul bad call. Matt, talk about roughing the passer ×2 in that LA Rams Tennessee game. What happened there?
Yeah, so this is an infuriating moment to watch here in a game that was, everybody's rooting for the Rams here, in the show. Bills fans, myself and my brother being Colts fans, like you need the Titans to lose. And, the Rams had a terrible start. They, were off to a 14-3 start in favor of the Tennessee Titans. And then they were trying to come back in this game, and, they're kind of showing some signs of life a little bit. And then there's 2 highly questionable roughing the passer calls almost in a row. They were almost consecutive. They first coming on a 3rd and long on Tannehill. It was really just kind of a strong push by Aaron Donald, not long after the ball had been released by Tannehill. But because he kind of like fell out of bounds, and it was like kind of a big fall out of bounds. The flag gets thrown. Very, very questionable. And then a couple plays later, I don't believe it was on a third down that time, but another 15-yard penalty for roughing the passer, which was, again, not the worst roughing the passer I've ever seen. Pretty much just extends the drive, allows Tennessee to get in the end zone again, and buried the Rams. So I just think it was, especially with the game on the line, it kind of, I don't want to say it was game deciding calls, but definitely, enough to put the Rams, away for the game after those two calls. So bad call.
Next up, Mike, you want to talk about the entire Monday Night Football game? There were plenty of parts to talk about there. Where do you want to start with this?
I mean, we can just talk about the entire team thing, but I mean, the first super egregious call was probably on the Fields pass to, who was that to? That got called back for a low block, even though the guy was well inside the tackle box, which makes it legal. So that happened. And then on the next play, Fields ran and got hit after he started sliding, and that didn't get called. And then on the next play, he threw the ball and literally like 2 or 3 seconds later got laid out. He's like laying flat on the ground, no flag there. So it's just like a bunch of calls. And then, I mean, the most egregious of all the calls was the taunting penalty on the punt, or on the sack on Ben, which, I mean, it was 4th and 15 plus. And I mean, Ben did what Ben is doing at this point in his career, where he's just throwing 5-yard passes, and they had no chance of getting a first down. So it was just, I mean, it completely, or changed the complete complexion of the game. I mean, that penalty kept their drive alive. It led to them getting a field goal. The Bears ended up losing by 2 points. Like, it was, I don't know, just the entire, and the thing on the taunting penalty is that the ref did make up his mind to throw the penalty, and then the guy walks past him, and the ref throws a body check into the guy.
Yeah, he sticks his butt out.
Let's get into that point here, because when it comes to the referees and throwing games, I don't know, it's getting kind of ridiculous this year. And this was one to remember, because he throws a body check, but not only that, he has the showmanship to throw the flag directly into the air and land his stance like he's freaking Kerry Strug landing at the Olympics.
Yeah, this is so great. Like, it's so bad. Like, I mean, to assert yourself as such an important part of the game as a referee is just, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for the league. It's embarrassing for him and his staff. I mean, it's just so it's so bad it's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think NFL refs kind of watched Joe West before this season and just said, I want to be like that guy.
Yeah, I really don't understand it at this point, and I think it's getting to a point where you kind of, if you're in the NFL, you should probably always be questioning this, but especially now, are refs possibly throwing games? Like, with gambling being so big now, and you can do it right on your phone.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you keep track of all this, and how do you check to make sure that they're not doing that? Now, obviously,
I suppose that's a possibility, but I think this is an ego thing. I think it's 100% an ego thing. I think he wanted to make a point, and he wanted to really punish this player, and so he did, and he made it happen. He made sure it happened
in spectacular fashion too. Dono's pick of the week, 4-1 Zoe.
Yeah, tough loss last week. I really felt good about Rafi. Or was that 2 weeks ago that I lost? Anyway, 4-1, but this week I feel pretty comfortable with Daniel Lafferty over the Charbacues. This is, I think, going to be a relatively close game, and there was some other choices that I could have picked Fat Jim's, I think is probably going to win this week too, but I feel strongly about Lafferty. He's kind of on a hot streak here. Looking at the matchup, I think he's got the edge against Barbill. And barbecue, this, the reason I picked this game is because like this has real implications for last place in the show and pizza buying possibilities. Daniel Lafferty's been hot lately, but his early season woes with lack of points in the beginning automatically puts him in that discussion. And the Charbacues have been there all year. So, if they want to get out of the pizza buying sweepstakes, they have to win this week. And I don't think they will.
And you're also taking Buffalo, giving away 13 points.
Yeah, Buffalo's going to smash in this game. The Jets, they're not good. They're horrible. Okay. And Buffalo just coming off an overwhelmingly embarrassing loss against Jacksonville. I don't care. This is actually, I think it's in New York, but
Yeah,
I think Buffalo wins easily by more than 2 touchdowns in this game. Lay the points, collect your money, and move on to next week.
Ride or die pick of the week. Ryder is 3-2.
3-0 in the last 3 weeks. Very good. Yeah. Picking Field of Rush this week. I don't know. Like I said earlier, I don't feel great about Flutie Flakes. And Field of Rush is coming on. I mean, like Matt was saying earlier, his receivers are great. Even with Ridley, taking his mental health break, I think that Rush is going to get done this week.
And you're taking Tennessee, giving 3 points to New Orleans.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tennessee might be the best team in the league. And New Orleans is playing with either Trevor Siemian or Taysom Hill. So to me, this is kind of a no-brainer.
This is so just my little input on that. This is a trappy game, in my opinion. This is very, very trappy.
I get the same feelings.
I just worry about that. Like, I think Mike is totally correct. Like, Tennessee is asserting themselves as one of the classes of the NFL. This feels very trappy to me. I do worry about this one. I feel better about betting Tennessee than I do about New Orleans, but this is definitely a very trappy game.
Snoop sleeper pick of the week. Snoop is not picking the show very well so far this season. 1-4 on these, but this week he's going Fat Jim's over the Jay Walsh football team, and he's also picking Kansas City, giving 2.5 points at Las Vegas. But with that said, Snoop is 3-0 picking the NFL games.
I like the Vegas side.
You want the plus 2.5?
I would bet Vegas at home. Vegas is a better team in my opinion, and they have a better defense, and they're getting points at home. I like Vegas here, but
I think I'm with Klein on this one. I think I like the Chiefs. I mean, there's just too much talent on that team. At some point in time, they're gonna have to get things going.
One thing I will say, I just heard the statistics, so I'm paraphrasing it, so don't quote me on this. But I believe there have been like 130 games this year, and the home team has only won about 50 of them.
Yeah, interesting.
So is home field advantage really a thing anymore?
It's interesting, especially because like last year with COVID and everything, and lack of fans in buildings, there was a lot of talk about that. Like, has home field advantage disintegrated, and is that still something that's important? And now this year the fans are back, and you're getting that same result. So it is an interesting question.
Going into this week's picks of the week. Height, you're leading everyone with 21 wins. McKenny, you're just behind with 19, and I've got some work to do with 15. Anyone going with the Nation this week?
Not this week. No, NWO is a very, very good team. They're scary right now. Them and Field of Rush are both very, very scary. I think those two teams and obviously the gyms are really the teams to beat right now. I know VBB is up there as well, and rightly so, but New World Order continues its ways, I think, this week.
Yeah, I'm not feeling the Nation this week. I'm going with NWO.
Well, you know what? I think the Nation is now in the position where it has some things to prove, and that's where the Nation excels the best. So I'm going to take the Nation over the NWO. Fat Jims against the Jay Walsh football team. This was Snoop's sleeper pick of the week. Is anyone betting against the Fat Jims?
I'm not.
No, I mean, if this is going to be a spread game, it's a double-digit favorite. If you like make this analogous to an NFL game, so I think we can be pretty comfortable with the Gyms here.
I mean, the Fat Jims now have the RB1, so I think they're going to cruise to the number 1 seed. I think.
Another game with possible playoff implications here. Feel the Rush against the Flutie Flakes.
Yeah, we talked earlier about Feel the Rush, being a scary team, and Mike, had elaborated a little bit about Flutie Flakes dropping off and having some concerns here. So I think we can, again, kind of get behind that for this week with Feel the Rush.
Mike, anything to add on that?
No, it's my ride or die. So that's all that needs to be said.
Yeah, again, until the Bills are able to prove otherwise, I mean, I see that being the saving grace here for Brian. If he's able to come up with a win, it's just because the Bills just go to town on the Jets this week. My team is fine against Trek. Wow, this is a game between two very struggling rosters. Matt, who you got?
Crazy as it is, I like my team is fine. This is kind of like my upset of the week, I think. We didn't see a great game on McCaffrey last week, mainly because I think it's his first game back from injury. I think he gets featured this week. I think he, maybe turns in a 30-plus point game. And I just think, I think my team is fine, is ready to get a win here. They've been struggling so much, and I see them winning this week. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough decision here in the Mexico game. I don't know. I'm going with Trek, but I didn't feel great about it. But I think the play to pick against my team is fine. So we're gonna stick with that strategy.
Yeah, I kind of like that strategy, and I'm still thinking that Lacombe does have a chance to make the playoffs, and in the end, that's all you're looking for. Yeah, Derrick Henry's tough to replace, but I think you can put someone in there.
Okay.
to at least minimize the damage there. Rusty Truckers against the Rafi Bombs. Matt, who do you have?
This is tough. I mean, my team has a lot of players on bye this week, and again, Rafi Bomb's in another situation where he absolutely has to win, and I think he squeaks it out this week.
Height, you feel the same way?
I do. Like Matt said, he's got some very important players on bye, and I still believe in the Rafi Bombs.
Yeah, I'm just in a position where I need to make up some points here, so I'm gonna bet against you guys for just the sake of trying to get a win out of it where you guys lose. Armin Tamzarian against the Van Buren boys. Can Tamzarian come up with a win here, Matt?
Yeah, I feel like I've been on the Armin train for a few weeks now, and I just like the matchups, it seems. And I think, as bad as this team is, I think he wins again this week and beats Van Buren boys, who's kind of reeling a little bit.
Height, you're thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I don't remember why I picked Armin, but I guess I feel strongly about them beating VBB. A little bit of a slide here for the boys.
I can't bet against the boys. I mean, they're eyeing that 8th win. Maybe that's what's holding them back right now. They just had a loss this week, but I can totally see them rebounding, even though they do have some players on buys. And after all, it's against Armin, who none of us have been really hot on. I know, Matt, you said that you've been on the Armin train as of late, but still a kind of like bottom to mid-tier team there that VBB should win. Last game of the week, the Charbacues and the Laffertys.
Yeah, as I said, this was my lock of the week, so I think we know where I stand here.
Yeah, I mean, I picked myself, but I don't feel great about it. I mean, I have Mixon on bye and Fields, who's really starting to come on, but I'm hoping the reserves can come through and put up enough to beat the basement dwellers that are the Charbacues.
I'm just betting against Steve at this point. Talking points. Matt.
Yeah, I think it's time to have the discussion about who the most surprising team is in the NFL. There's a couple teams I want to throw out there, and then maybe we can kind of have a little discussion about it. And Mike, in our pre-show discussion, kind of also wanted to throw out the most surprising show team. So we're going to discuss that as well. A couple teams I want to talk about specifically in regards to the most surprising team. Number one, I think we got to start in the AFC West, and that's Kansas City Chiefs. They were supposed to be the Super Bowl favorites on the AFC side, at least. And they really have underwhelmed significantly. A lot of teams that end up coming in as the runner-up in the Super Bowl. This is a common trend with those teams, but I don't think anybody really foresaw how bad, especially the offense of Kansas City would look. So I think they're certainly one of the teams that we got to think about here. And I think the other team is in the AFC. I think has been really kind of surprising and dominant as we've seen is Tennessee. And I don't think we really thought that they were necessarily in danger of not being a playoff team or that they couldn't win the division, but they've kind of really decimated everybody they've played recently. So I think there's a couple teams in the AFC, and then towards the NFC side of things, I think we got to look at the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, they've just been dominating that strong division, playing really well. For a while they were undefeated. They just recently lost, but certainly looking like one of the best teams in the league. And then in terms of the teams that really have underwhelmed and not really played very well, I mean, there's a lot of teams in the NFC that you would look at as potential issues, but and I guess not really any of them surprising necessarily, but I think the biggest one is the Washington football team. We expected this team to be potentially a playoff contender, a team that was really good on defense. They saw a really good playoff kind of push towards the end of the year, and I know their record wasn't very good, but they really almost beat the Buccaneers in the playoffs. So, I think they're pretty underwhelming and disappointing team. So what are your guys' thoughts on the most surprising team in the NFL?
Yeah. So I guess mine in the AFC for surprising in a bad way. I actually had high expectations for the Dolphins this year. I actually think Brian Flores is a really good coach. Their defense was very good, and they gave every team they played last year a game. They were right around 500, and I just thought with Tua being in his second year, bringing in who they bring in? Wide receiver.
Fuller.
Yeah, Will Fuller. I mean, obviously he's a Band-Aid, but
Jalen Waddle.
Waddle obviously they drafted, but I was talking about Fuller. With those new weapons, I thought they were going to be a much better team than they've been, and they've just been atrocious. Tua obviously has been healthy. Obviously relying on Jacoby Brissett is not a recipe for success. So the Dolphins would be my AFC team, and NFC wise, I guess the Vikings. I mean, the Vikings are being the Vikings at this point in time. They're in every game. They find a way to blow it. I don't understand what they do. I mean, what they're doing. They have we talked about this last week. They have two very good receivers. I mean, obviously Jefferson is the better of the two, but Thielen is still scoring touchdowns at this point in time. And they have Dalvin Cook. They get these leads and then they just completely take their foot off the gas. And then they allow teams to come back on them. I mean, they were up by 14, I think, last weekend and just stopped playing offense, and Baltimore came back and then obviously won overtime. So I don't know. I mean, they should have beaten Arizona earlier in the season. They missed a field goal at the end of the game. And I don't know. They're just one of those teams that finds a way to lose.
Yeah, I think the surprising teams for me would be the Bills, to a certain extent. Surprising because they're not showing to be the team that we thought they should be. Even before the season, I think I might have said I'd be surprised if I saw them lose 3 games this year. But here we are, and they've already lost 3 games. So I would put the Bills there as the AFC team, and the NFC. I'd probably go with the Rams. The Rams are kind of surprising to an extent that they're moving up the rankings because of Matt Stafford. And last year they just weren't doing it with Jared Goff, and we didn't know what Matt Stafford was going to do this year. So that's why I put them as the most surprising team there, and I still think that they're the team to beat in the NFC.
Yeah, what do you guys think about the show's most surprising team?
Oh, for me, it's got to be
it's
Fat Jim's.
Yeah, it's Neil for me too. I mean, I had no faith in this team coming out of the draft. I was actually very concerned about them, but I mean, his strategy of drafting 3 good PPR running backs has been obviously the key to his success.
Yeah, he got Jonathan Taylor for such a value. I think at the time of the draft, it was a lot of questions about the health of Carson Wentz and Quentin Nelson, and it kind of drove his price down. And I don't think anybody foresaw how much he was going to be utilized in the passing game as well. So, that was a huge pick for him. I think the biggest surprise for me, and I know I've kind of been a campaigner on this, is Rafi Bombs. I thought he was going to be a contender for me for the Shofi this year, and he just really has not turned in a good performance. And I think a lot of that has to do with Allen Robinson, basically being misused or just not even used really in a pretty anemic Chicago Bears offense. So I think those are pretty good options for most surprising team for the show.
Yeah, I mean, Rafi was asking today if he's in last place record wise, if he still has most points of the bottom 7 or 8 teams, if he'd still make the playoffs. So obviously he hasn't lost faith in his team, but
Right.
It's getting pretty close to that point, I would say.
Speaking of losing faith, Mike Height, have you lost faith in daylight saving time?
Well, you wouldn't know anything about this living in Arizona, but yeah, I don't know if I hate it, but it was just Sunday was a really weird day. I mean, I woke up, did some work around the house, and it was like 10:30. I felt like I'd been working for hours, and I still had 2.5 hours until game time. It's just like I'm looking outside right now. It's pitch black. It's been pitch black since 5:00 today. And it's not, I'm not a huge fan of it. As a golfer, I mean, it ruins any chance of playing golf after work. So I'm a very anti daylight savings time. I think you just keep the clocks what they're at all year round. And I mean, like watching Sunday night football and Monday night football is just torture. I mean, they're essentially ending at 1:00 my body's time, and having to wake up the next day for work is just not ideal.
Yeah, this is a great discussion. This is a great talking points because, as most people know, daylight savings time was initially instated by Benjamin Franklin to try to make life better for farmers. And now our technology has kind of surpassed, the need for doing this type of, manipulation of the clock and trying to shift things around. So it's not really something we need anymore. It's kind of more of just a useless tradition. So it's definitely an interesting talk. I had this conversation with a colleague of mine yesterday, actually. What do you prefer? Would you rather have it be dark when you go into work, or would you rather it be dark when you come home from work? And unfortunately, you're going to have that a little bit on both ends of that spectrum, but we both kind of agreed, like, we'd rather have an hour after work than an hour before work. Might as well just go to work in the dark and then come home and actually feel like you're alive for about an hour. So I'm with you, Mike. I kind of think I'm more on the side of I hate it.
Well, I don't really have an opinion on it, but I do have some insights on this because in Arizona, we do not observe daylight saving time. We're on Mountain Standard Time all the time. However, in my job, for many reasons, I know a lot about the effects of daylight saving time. And for example, one of the ways that it affects drivers negatively is in that evening commute, you're now going home in the dark. Mm-hmm. When for 6-7 months, how long does this go? I think it's 8 months actually. For 8 months, you haven't been doing that. And then suddenly just one day, boom, lights go out and you've got to drive home at night. And statistics have shown that 50% of car accidents happen at night, despite there being lesser traffic on the roads. So it's clearly more dangerous to be driving in the evening. I think for that reason alone, it should be time to abolish daylight saving time. Now, with that said, it's also a pain in the butt for me because even though I don't change, everyone else changes around me. So my time actually changes to them. So when I'm at 7 o'clock, Pacific is at 6 o'clock and they move over, they're then at 7 o'clock with me. Even though they're in a different time zone and it confuses everyone else, and I've got to tell them, no, you're the one that changed, I didn't. So that's all I got to say on daylight saving time. Last thing that we want to go over is a snake update. One of my talking points this week was I'd like to have a discussion about instating that point win, where if you're in the top half of the league, you get an extra win for having the most or top half of the most points. Matt, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, so I would say overall I have mixed feelings about this. I like it in the sense that you are rewarding teams that score a lot of points, and objectively the better fantasy team. However, I also think that part of the fun of fantasy football is you don't there's a little bit of randomness and there's a little bit of playing against a good team. It's like you could play a very, very good team in the NFL. Like, let's say you're the Houston Texans, for example, and you play a great game, but you play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and they're just a little better than you and you lose. And I think it's kind of more representative of what real football is like. And I'm always a proponent and a fan of trying to make fantasy more like the real thing. So I like doing head-to-heads. I like doing, just matching up against one team every week. I like playing in different types of leagues and different settings and scenarios, but I would not be a proponent of changing the way we set this up in the show. I like the the matchup against one team every week. I think it's more fun for me.
Mike, I don't believe you're in the Drunken Snake, are you?
I am not.
So
Not at the draft.
What are your thoughts about this? This is something that we're trying out in the Drunken Snake, where you get an extra win if you're in that top 5 because there's 10 teams. So if you're in that top 5 of scoring.
Yeah, no, I don't hate it in theory. But I agree with Matt. I think a big part of the fun of fantasy football is just that one-on-one matchup with your opponent. And I think it takes away from that. So I don't like that aspect of it. I mean,
it still gives you a win or loss head to head, but it gives you an additional win if you have.
I know, but it's essentially only worth half as much.
Yeah, I think we've done a good job too. Like we're giving the 7th seed, the ability to get in on the merit of points. It's already kind of shifting in that direction, where you're not just having it be based on record. So, I think we've already kind of made some changes to try to, get away from punishing teams that have had bad luck during the season. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off too much there, Mike. Go ahead and keep.
But I guess like as we're talking this out, I kind of just had an idea that I want to bounce off you guys. Like now that we're doing the 14 game regular season, I don't love having to play somebody twice. I think it's kind of stupid. And I think, if somebody's playing someone like Steve twice, like that's 2 guaranteed wins. My idea would be for the 14th win to do this victory, or top half get a win, the other half don't.
That's what we're doing. That's already been decided for this year.
What?
That's how week 14 is going to be.
Oh.
Yeah, we already decided on that. It's going to be top half of the league. So the top 7 teams get a win, the bottom 7 teams get a loss.
Oh.
Yeah, we've already made that decision.
Well, I'm glad I had the same great idea as everybody else.
So wrapping up the Snake update, I'm just going to go over the top 5 teams. Snake Muppets. At the top of the league, 15-3. Team Walsh J 413 with 14-4. Grizzly Bears at number 3. Rafi Bombs at number 4 with a 10-8 record, and Mick Magoo at number 5 with a 9-9 record.
Geez, I wonder why Klein wanted to talk about the snake update. Plug his number 1 team real quick before we go to the next segment here.
One other talking point real quick I just want to talk about. Did you guys see what happened in the NBA game last night when Markieff Morris came in, kind of bodied Jokic?
No,
you kind of lost me at NBA game.
Okay. Well, so obviously Jokic is the reigning NBA MVP, and Markieff Morris is just a goon, essentially. Like, he's like a 90s NHL goon. He just goes out there and tries to like beat the shit out of the other team. But so Jokic is going over midcourt, and he's going to pass the ball, and Morris just like runs into him and kind of like bumps knees and like tosses an elbow into his ribs and starts like walking away like nothing happened. And Jokic just like walks up behind him and just like gives him a shoulder, and he goes flying. And like it turns into a whole melee, like both benches clear and like guys are shouting at each other. And then like the Heat like showed up after the game at the Nuggets locker room and like tried to come and fight him. Like it was like a whole big thing. Like Jimmy Butler's like talking smack from like the other side of they have like a security guard, and there's like a pitcher, and there's like 5 Heat guys standing on the other side of the door. And then like so Jokic is from Serbia, and his brothers, he has like, I don't know, like 8 brothers, and they all have like one shared Twitter account. And they're saying like, Jimmy Butler, come see us if you want to. This is a very funny situation.
That's pretty funny. It's funny how you mentioned that. It seems like he'd be a 90s hockey goon. Like it sounds like the after effects, would come right out of like a movie like Slapshot, or like like a 70s hockey movie where you
just show up.
Yeah, at the hotel, like ready to fight after the game and stuff. I thought Jokic played for the Mavericks, so that's how out of touch I am with basketball.
No, you're thinking of I can't even think of his name right now.
Moving along, the Watson trades of the week. What do you think of this first one? Mike Williams and Marquise Brown for, is that Deontay Harris?
Damian.
And Kareem Hunt. Matt, what's going on with Kareem Hunt? Is he coming back soon?
No, I mean, he's still dealing with that soft tissue injury. I actually don't think this trade is as bad as it looks on its face. Like, I understand why this is included in the Watson trades of the week. And, I understand why Watson's an idiot for proposing it, but Mike Williams has kind of been a little bit sluggish the last couple of weeks. I think the time to trade him would have been a couple of weeks ago when he was like at the top of the league and it was like a sell high. But right now, like if you needed running back help, like if you already had a couple of other receivers besides Hollywood and Mike Williams, maybe you make this trade to get Hunt back, because he's going to come back strong and be a good contributor. And then Harris is a pretty solid running back for New England. And, I actually don't hate this trade that much. I actually kind of maybe golf claps for Watson on this one.
I think this is an awful trade. I mean, Hunt is eligible to come off IR this week, but they're saying he needs at least one more week. And then Harris got knocked out of the game last week, and he was already splitting touches with Ramondre Stevenson, and Bolden is like their pass catching receiver. I understand that Harris has scored a decent amount of touchdowns this year, but yes, Williams has slowed down, but Marquise is like the number 4 or 5 receiver in the NFL. So to me, this is completely lopsided, awful trade.
All right, Matt, if you thought that was fair, let's try to up the stakes here. What about this one?
Okay, now we're talking a little more the regular Watson garbage that comes through here, because we have Michael Carter, who is becoming one of the better running backs in fantasy right now, really emerging as the number 1 running back for the New York Jets. And you're going to trade him for Hunter Henry, who is plug tight end for New England, who, unless he scores a touchdown, you're probably going to be looking at a 5 or 6 point game at best. So this is a very bad trade.
Watson says it's fair for both managers, though.
Yeah.
Last one, Mike, break this one down for me. This one's a little bit loaded.
Yeah. So Julio is droppable at this point in time. Ayuk had a good game last week, but I don't know. I think Jimmy G at some point in time is going to get benched and Lance is going to come in. And I don't think he's going to be able to support Debo, Kittle, and Ayuk. So one of the three is going to drop off. So I don't love that. Sanders is hurt right now. Quez Watkins is droppable. And Trey Sermon is like the 5th running back on the 49ers. So
the way it sounds to me, this isn't favorable for either manager.
yeah, I guess my suggestion would just be all 5 players should just be dropped, and then you can pick up whoever you want.
That's your Watson trades of the week. We have one more segment, this or that. And today we're talking Wilson or Darnold.
Oh boy.
Matt, who are you taking between these two first round quarterbacks?
Yeah. Well, this is a tough decision. And not for a good reason. I'm going to argue on the side of Sam Darnold here, although I think both options don't look great. Sam Darnold has shown, a few times this year that he's, he can play at a very high level. Towards the beginning of the season, he was putting up really good fantasy numbers and, leading the Panthers to some wins. I think they started out 3-0 if I remember correctly, and since then they've really kind of dropped off pretty steeply. So I think Sam Darnold still has the potential to have good play. The problem is lately he's just been absolutely worse than bad. So I guess the question is, do you think there's any possibility that he can go back to what he was earlier on in the season? Or do you feel like, basically this is what he is, and, first few weeks are kind of more of just like, anomaly, I guess. So I know that's not a ring endorsement for Darnold, but we haven't really seen great play from Wilson thus far. I know he's a rookie and he's young, and he's still got a lot to prove. But as of week 10 in the NFL, the only player that we've seen perform at an elite level, or a very high level, I should say, is Sam Darnold.
Mike, you got to jump up here and defend my boy, Zach Wilson.
Yeah. Oh, just real quick, Matt, Luka Doncic is who you were thinking of earlier.
Okay. Yes.
But I have to say that I'm very disappointed we didn't choose the headshot of Wilson with the headband, the Jordan headband, and the spiked hair. I'm going to go with the lesser of two evils, I guess. Although, Wilson threw 4 interceptions in a game earlier this season. I guess I'm going to go on the side of just the unknown. We know what Sam Darnold is. He's not a good quarterback. He had 3 good games where he decided he was going to be a rushing quarterback early in the season, and he hasn't even turned back into a pumpkin. He's turned back into a rotten pumpkin. It's just been awful. I have no doubt that the Carolina team doctors took a hammer to his scapula or something like that, just to end the season, just to make it not any worse than it could have been. Zach Wilson was pretty good in college at BYU, but I couldn't believe the Jets made the pick when they did. So I don't know. He doesn't really have weapons there right now. I actually think Carter's going to be pretty good long term. But receivers wise, we'll see. I don't know. He doesn't have Corey Davis is not the big receiver that a young quarterback needs. They don't really have a tight end. So I don't know. I guess I'm just going with the unknown that Zach Wilson could eventually become something, and I already know that Sam Darnold's not going to be.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you make too, because Elijah Moore is the other guy with the Jets. I think actually could potentially be good, but you look at the talent that Darnold has, and he's got some really. I mean, DJ Moore is a good receiver. This is a guy who on another team would probably be a top 5 guy. Because Darnold is probably holding him back to some degree. So that's another interesting thing here.
Well, look what Robbie Anderson's been elsewhere too.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely.
And what I was saying there was, speaking of turning back into a pumpkin, look at Robbie Anderson and how far he's fallen since he had a different quarterback at the helm. So maybe he's another guy that could benefit from a quarterback change. Wrapping up this show, we got another Pokemon for you.
Can we get one that I can actually pick? Am I going to figure out this one or what?
Well, do you know of a Cleveland tight end in 2015 that averaged 12.5 points per game? He also helped the Carlos Polios Hermanos score the high of that week in week 9 of 2015.
Oh, is this B. Jars' guy? Is this the anti-owl? What was his name?
Oh, yeah.
We'll find out next week.
Well, hold on. Let's see if we can get it.
Oh, I can't.
What the heck's this guy's name? Yeah. I can't think of it now. My first thought was Ben Watson, but because I think he was with Cleveland for a little while. But I can't remember the guy's name. The anti-howl that you were talking about.
Dan something, right?
I can't remember, to be honest with you. I can't. But yeah, it could be. Yeah. Just along the same lines as runs like a refrigerator. A couple of other go-tos that he likes to do. Basically lumps them all into those poor athletic categories.
Mike, any final thoughts this week?
No final thoughts for me. Week 9 was a very weird NFL week. So I'm hoping for a little bit of a return to normalcy.
All right.
Yeah, I think we will. I think we're going to see some favorites kind of respond again. I think the Bills get a win. I think the Colts continue to win. So hopefully some of these other crappy teams that are in the AFC that I don't want making the playoffs ahead of my team. Hopefully they lose. So we'll see what happens.
and you know what? Let's win a freaking parlay here. Come on, boys.
We've been close. I mean, we would have won our parlay in week 1 if we didn't get greedy and pick, Denver money line. We would have won a couple $100, but we were getting 2 out of 3 the last couple weeks. So maybe this is our week.
It was on me last week. I don't know.
I would pick Cincinnati too. I don't think that's your it's hard. I don't think a lot of people saw the Browns winning that game. Cincinnati's been a better team, but it's sometimes that's the way it is in the NFL. You can't predict things.
Well, let's see if your prediction of a trap game or not rings true on the Tennessee line. I think that's an interesting one to watch as we head into week 10 of the NFL season. That's all the time we have for you on this week's episode of the SHODcast. We'll be back next week with another great episode.